You can data log with these type systems from the OBD2. So whatever information is available through a scan tool, you can actually select and put into a log, and you can go out and do a drive, and you can see how the factory ECU's other stuff is responding to what you are doing with the tables that you're working with. And I had mentioned an overwrite. Now, the first exposure was somebody with a Chevy Silverado got a tune, great, he's getting beautiful performance and fuel economy, and then he took it into the dealer for an oil change. And ever since then, it had not been working right. So he brought it back to my buddy who did the tune. And my buddy goes in there and he said, "This is all stock stuff. What the heck happened?" So he reloaded his custom tune. Guy's back to getting performance and mileage again. And then later, there was a newer Silverado that this same buddy tuned. He never took it to the dealer. Just one day, the mileage and performance went away. And again, my buddy goes in there and is like, "What happened to my tune? It's gone." Then we learned about how the OEMs are doing updates over the air through the satellite radio. You don't even need to take it into the factory to the dealer to get something done. They can do it over the radio. If you run into that situation, remember you saved your stock tune, you saved the one that was doing you good, and now you got a third one involved. Compare what the overwrite changed from what you called stock. More often than not, it has nothing to do with any of the tables or comps that you altered. It has to do with evap solenoid or transmission shift points or something totally unaffected. And it would be a good idea if you had like a compare software where it just compares this and this and shows you the differences at a quick glance, and just find out what the factory over-the-air update changed. And if it doesn't affect what you're doing, incorporate those changes into your custom tune and then reload it again. That's probably the best. Then we have standalone ECUs. This would be Motec, Megasquirt, Link PC, Excel DFI. The list is quite lengthy. And with those, you can replace all or part of what the factory ECU did. They're also great for converting carbureted to fuel injected. This is going to require a lot of wiring, right? It may be about what you got with the uni chip. It may be more, but it's still going to be a lot of wiring. And unlike HP Tuner, you don't have a factory tune to start with. So your XY tables are going to be all zeros. Just to get the thing started, you've got to go in there and start trying stuff and get it to where it'll sit there and idle. If you're lucky and there's popular applications that people have already figured some stuff out, a lot of times you can just download somebody else's tune, and it's a good starting point. At least it starts, it drives, and then you can go in and start tweaking from there. They allow you to data log. Most of them, I had an early Link PC that did not. That was a G2, but the newer G4, they'll do data logging. Most do. But they're not going to data log OBD2 stuff because they're a standalone. So you can only log what it sees as an input. That gives ultimate control over spark timing, fuel delivery, and whatever else you have it controlling. But it's not going to be legal for most vehicles in most parts of the world. I mean, this is off-road only or older vehicles. So whenever possible, go with an HP Diablo, Honda, something like that, because now you're legal. But this is like the ultimate last stop. Now, once you have everything in place, now it's time to actually start tuning. And what does that look like? Well, save the baseline. Your baseline is going to be the tune. If it's like HP or Diablo, it's going to be a logged session where you have a route that you're going to drive every single time for your tuning, so you can do before-after comparisons on the same route. So you want to go out and run that route and data log it. If you're running a 5-gas, that's part of it also. Now, when you save the files, you got stock, underscore, 6-2-23. So that'd be June 2nd of 2023. And then you could do like _1 if you want to start numbering them, which you will later, not so much with stock. And then it'd be dot, the extension. That's dictated by HP, whatever their extension for their files are. That'd be dictated by EMS for their logging and so forth. And then when you actually go in to start tuning, start with your main tables in Ignition, where you disable any kind of compensation, any kind of feedback. You want to be able to change the table value and not have a comp come in and start messing with it while you're in the process of tuning. And you start it idle, and then you just start, opening the throttle, and you try to work your way across the bottom up until a reasonable RPM. Don't blow the engine. And then you go back and you give it a little bit of a load. So maybe put it in gear and take it as far. And in gear, you're not going to get out here. And then just keep working your way up and over and start filling it out. The way it's going to look is you got your idle down here, and then you got your max RPM, max load up here, and that's the swath that you'll be covering, because you're not going to have red line no load where you really care, and you're not going to have these outer blocks are not going to be really ever hit. You're never going to hit them. But this swath is where you're always going to be driving at some point or another. So you just spend your time filling it in. And then once you've got the ignition table filled in, then you would go in and you would work on your fuel table. If you're doing like an HP tuner or something, your feedback system's going to want to target 14.7 to 1, with an exception I'll get to in a moment. So you're not trying to change that air-fuel ratio by changing injector pulse width values in your XY table. What you are trying to do is change what we're calling a baseline, because that'll allow the fuel trims to stay under that 10% plus or minus margin and be happy. And there's something called lean cruise mode, which I'm aware of on GMs. It may be available for others. North America doesn't use it. Australia, New Zealand, Europe, they do use it. And what that means is that at cruise, it'll target, instead of 14.7 to 1, it'll target a leaner air-fuel ratio, and that's good for 20% increase in fuel economy. Right there. That's pretty much rock solid, no matter how many times we've tried it. When you go in and you find your lean cruise mode setting in HP Tuner, you're going to see that any speed below 249 miles per hour, it's disabled. So you got to take that 249 and drop it down to like a reasonable 42, 45 miles per hour. And then any speed over that, now lean cruise mode will actually work. So 20%, no other changes. Beef your ignition and some other tweaks, and that can be worth more. So you're going to go through ignition, you're going to go through fuel, again with all the feedbacks turned off, and then you'll go into your comp tables. So like for fuel, you would start with a cold engine, go into your coolant temp comp table, and that's where you set the choke. And so with beef your ignition, you can reduce the amount of enrichment. So instead of 500% at this temperature, you can get by with 400 or 410%. And with ignition, your air temp compensation, if you need to mess with it with like HP Tuner, Diablo, those would probably be close enough. You don't really have to spend a lot of time on them. But if you have a standalone, well, they're all zeros, so you got to set them. And that's going to take a couple of months, because your ambient air temperature, you're probably going to want to add a few degrees more ignition timing when it's really cold, but then you might want to actually retard it a bit when it gets really hot to prevent detonation, keep your NOx level sane. So you do your comp tables after you get your main table set up. And then, of course, you're going to have to activate the comps, re-enable them in order to adjust them. And you're just targeting active cells and keeping an eye on any peripheral cells that might be influencing it. Then you may have to go back and do the whole thing again. Think about this. You got your air-fuel ratio. Let's think standalone here. You have your air-fuel ratio, targeting, and injector pulse width, or volumetric efficiency is another way that you can tune your fuel tables. And you change them. You do your ignition, then you do your fuel, and you change it. Now your ignition may not be optimal because now your air-fuel ratio has changed. So you do ignition, then you have to do fuel, then you go back and refine tune ignition. So there may be some bouncing back and forth that you have to do. And with comp tables, you know what? I took this out of the main table, but I really needed to make that change in the comp table. Let me give it back in the main table and compensate here, kind of deal. It's not for the faint-hearted. The simple tweaks, an IXR, maybe a map adjust. I mean, those are simple things that most people can grasp onto, and it's not that difficult. But when you start getting much beyond that, just be prepared to spend some time learning. And for an all-out system, even HP Diablo, it may take you a couple of weeks or a couple of months before you get it to where you're really happy. I'm not trying to scare you away. If you stick with it and you continue to try to learn, you will conquer it. It's doable. So I apologize for taking this long, but this is just a mere glimpse. I mean, the tuning, it is a very deep and wide topic. And the masters are still learning on a regular basis. But I want to see you successful. I don't want to see you give up because you're overwhelmed. And if I prepare you to what it's going to look like, you're more likely to succeed. And I'm rooting for you.